On Mom's birthday party, I gave her a gift of 10,000 yuan, and my sister gave her a gold bracelet. Mom casually mentioned, "It's always the little sis who knows me best." She got me the bracelet I've been wanting, but she had told me over the phone not to buy her any more jewelry since she had plenty. I thought I was used to being undermined, but this time it got to me. I pulled back the red envelope from her hand and said, "If you don't like it, don't take it. I won't give you any more." The room went silent, and all the relatives looked at each other awkwardly. Mom forced a smile and said, "Oh, come on. You're all grown up now. No need to get upset just because I praised your sister." I nodded seriously, "Yes, I'm upset, and I won't forgive you." With that, I got up and left the house. It was wet outside. Apparently it had rained, and the air felt fresh. I took a deep breath, but the years of resentment wouldn't leave my chest. My sister is 2 years younger than me, and used to get sick a lot as a kid. Because of this, Mom favored her, always telling me to let her have her way. That went on for more than 20 years. I wandered aimlessly, and soon tiny raindrops began to fall again. I didn't have an umbrella, nor did I care to find shelter. Passing by a maternity hospital, I saw couples coming and going, many with small children in tow. Some kids were jumping around. Others were nestled in their parents' arms, all smiles. They had no idea that once a sibling arrives, life might change dramatically. When my sister was born, Dad and Grandma took me to the hospital. Before that, I was the apple of Mom's eye. Before entering the delivery room, Mom asked gently, "Are you excited, honey? You'll have a cute little brother or sister soon." I nodded, clueless. Does that mean I'll have someone to play with? Grandma grumbled disapprovingly. It better be a brother, not a sister. Mom ignored her. We waited in the hospital hallway for what felt like forever. So long that I fell asleep. In my dreams, someone in a white coat hurried over and whispered something, and Dad and Grandma quickly followed. They left me sleeping on a chair, forgotten. When I woke up, it was dim in the corridor, and I felt alone. I was so scared that I trembled uncontrollably. I only dared cry silently, afraid that monsters in the shadows would hear me and come out to bite. I don't remember how long it was until Grandma came, muttering angrily, "Another useless girl." I stopped crying instantly and clung to Grandma's clothes, scared she'd leave me again in her anger. Inside the bright hospital room, I ached to run into Mom's arms. But Mom's arms were around my newborn sister. She smiled warmly just like before, but her eyes no longer held me. She didn't even glance at me, focused entirely on the tiny baby. After Mom brought my sister home, she argued fiercely with Grandma. Grandma, who had promised to help with the baby, went back to her hometown, leaving Mom to take care of my sister alone. Dad had to work and couldn't help during the day. Finally, left with no choice, Mom brought her mom over to help. But Grandma had my uncle's newborn son to mind, so she left as soon as Mom's recovery month was over. After that, Mom never seemed to smile with joy again. She was either busy with chores or holding my sister, who would cry if put down. Mom no longer had time to play with me or tell me stories. She didn't even bother doing my hair, simply cutting it short. Yet she used to say I looked like a princess with long hair. I cried so hard. She coldly told me, "If you want to cry, go outside and do it. Don't wake your sister." I sensed that having a sister changed my mom forever. For the next 20+ years, this was constantly proven true. Tired from walking, I randomly entered a coffee shop. I pulled out my phone, which was set to silent, and saw dozens of missed calls and hundreds of contact messages. I didn't have to look to know it was Dad, Mom, my sister, and probably aunts and uncles making trouble. The phone buzzed again. It was Dad. I answered, "Becky, what's wrong with you today? You talked back to your mom on her birthday, then ran off. How could you be so thoughtless?" I replied coolly, but being thoughtful never got me anything. I prepared the cake and food, gave Dad a red envelope as expensive as the bracelet. But did Mom thank me even once? Dad hesitated, then said the same old line. "As the older sister, you should take on more responsibility at home. Don't hold grudges against your mom or sister." Tears finally started falling as I choked up. Did I ever choose to be the big sister? Did anyone ask if I wanted to be? You're the elder sister, so of course you should let your younger sister have her way. I heard this over and over growing up, From age 2, my sister was frail, always feverish or coughing, needing hospital visits. When I started kindergarten, I'd often be the last one left waiting, eventually taken home by a kind neighbor. Home was empty, and I'd wait hungry for the adults to return. There were no chocolates or cookies anymore. I'd been told seeing me eat would make my sister cry and want some, but she had bronchitis, and the doctor said no sweets. Mom, wanting no fuss, cut out all treats. Mom would come home with my sister after they'd eaten, exhausted and too tired to cook. By the time Dad cooked, I was starving. I always envied my sister, who got full with Mom outside and didn't go hungry. I learned not to throw tantrums, knowing clearly Mom wouldn't soothe me. After kindergarten, and before Dad was transferred to another place, Mom couldn't handle 2 kids, especially with one always sick. So they sent me to live and study at Grandma's. When I was a kid, I was timid and cried easily. To me, the relatives at my grandma's house were just strangers I'd seen a few times. I still remember the moment my mom turned to leave. I clung to her shirt, crying and begging her, "Mom, please let me stay at home. I promise I won't trouble you, and I'll help look after my sister." Mom frowned and loosened my grip. "Quit fussing. Your sister's waiting at the neighbor's. You're not going to be mistreated here. Stop being so dramatic." She didn't understand. Or maybe she did but couldn't help it. How terrified a 6-year-old kid felt being sent away to a strange place. Grandma's house had 3 floors and lots of people. There were my grandparents, my uncle and his family, an unmarried uncle, my cousin who grew up there, and later my divorced aunt and her daughter. No one bullied me. Everyone treated me well. But I wasn't happy at all. No one favored me. My cousin was Grandma's favorite, always cuddling with her. My uncle's son was their golden child, and my cousin had her mom to spoil her. I was just alone. Whenever something upset me, I'd hide on the stairs crying quietly. Once the tears dried, I'd face people again with a smile. At first, my mom visited weekly. I'd excitedly share school stories, while she half listened, often complaining to Grandma about how hard it was raising my sister alone. Over time, her visits got less frequent, sometimes every 2 or 3 weeks. She'd say, "Your sister's sick again. Be good and don't cause trouble at Grandma's. Study hard. I don't have time for you." I obediently agreed because I feared if I misbehaved, she'd stop visiting altogether. I stayed at Grandma's for 6 years, rarely going home for summer or winter breaks, because Mom said she couldn't manage. Only during holidays would the family gather. Before starting middle school, Dad finally got transferred back. He took me home, that familiar yet strange place. My sister was already a 4th grader, her health much better. As I entered, she was throwing a fit, saying, "I don't want to share a room with my sister. I want my own." Mom coaxed her, "Sonny, be good. Your sister can help with your homework and take care of you." I felt uncomfortable. Was bringing me back just about taking care of her? Mom kept calming her with promises of taking her to KFC. Only her, not me. But I wanted to go too. Why not? Over the years, my parents hadn't taken me out for a meal alone. I looked to Dad for help. He coughed a bit and said, "Let's bring Becky too." Mom rolled her eyes at him. I finally calmed Sonny. "Don't mess it up." She glanced at me impatiently. "Fine. I'll bring you something back. Just organize your stuff here." I nodded obediently. I waited at home for ages, long enough that Dad finished lunch, and still they weren't back. I was starving, dreaming of a big meal. I ran over when I heard the door. Mom handed me a box casually. "There's a burger inside. Eat it." Just a burger? That was disappointing. Opening it, the burger was cold and had a bite taken out. I was stunned. Was this leftovers packed for me? Dad noticed something was wrong, so he walked over. I showed him the box with tears nearly spilling out. "Dad," I whispered, "the burger's been bitten." Mom replied indifferently. Sonny wasn't full and took a bite. My sister made a face. "I wanted a bite." "So what? If you don't want it, give it back." I couldn't hold back anymore. I pushed her hard. "Why can't I have a room? Why didn't Mom take me? And why'd you bite my burger?" She fell heavily and started crying loudly. Mom slapped me, shocked. "How dare you push Sonny?" I screamed back, "Am I still your daughter? All you do is favor her." Mom tried to hit me again, but Dad stopped her. I stood there stubbornly as my sister cried hysterically. Mom, angry, stormed to her room, and Dad hurried to calm her. No one seemed to care I was still hungry. I thought for a moment, then walked to the kitchen and shoved the burger into my mouth. The cold chicken wasn't crunchy anymore, and the bread was tough. It tasted weird, but I ate it bite by bite. This was mine. I wouldn't let her have it. After that showdown, my sister toned down. Dad must have talked to Mom because though she made me apologize, she was nicer than before. I obediently did as told. As long as it meant she'd love me like she used to, I'd apologize. She often reminded me, your sister was sickly when young. You're 2 years older, you should care for her. I bore it. Until the semester was nearly over, my sister and I managed to coexist without issues. That day, I got home right after getting my exam results, and my little sister was already there. I came in second in the grade, and I was super eager for my parents to come home from work to be proud of me. My sister was crying, and I could tell right away that she did poorly on her test. She's always had below average grades. A few years back, my mom was more worried about her health, so she didn't push her on studies. And now she can't really catch up. I didn't comfort her. We're not that close yet. Mom got home before Dad did. When she walked in, my sister was still sobbing. I didn't even get a chance to talk about my own results before Mom's expression changed. She walked straight over to me, slapped me, and hugged my sister. My face stung, my head was ringing, and there she was yelling at me, Becky, are you bullying Sunny again? This was the second time she slapped me because of my sister. I still remember how it felt, like a bucket of ice water was dumped over my head. No, more like millions of buckets, drowning me into a deep, dark lake. I felt like I was suffocating, about to drown. I covered my ears and crouched down, trying to shut out everything Mom was saying. I don't know how long I stayed like that, but then Dad got home. I looked up like he was my only hope. I held back tears and said slowly and clearly, Dad, I didn't bully my sister. She's crying because she didn't do well on her exam. Please believe me, okay? I heard my voice shaking because I was scared. In that moment, I realized that in Mom's heart, my sister was the one she really cared about. And I was, well, nothing. If Dad felt the same way, what would I do? Dad pulled me up and asked my sister what happened. My sister seemed too scared by Mom's slapping and yelling to speak. After a while, she finally said, I didn't say my sister bullied me. I'm crying because I failed math. Hearing that, I burst into tears, crying so hard I couldn't stop. Dad yelled angrily at Mom, why can't you figure it out before you hit someone? Mom's face went red. Sunny was crying so much, and she didn't even comfort her. Is that what a sister does? Was I wrong to hit her? Sunny's weak. What if she cries herself sick? Dad stayed silent. He sighed, took me to the kitchen, and handed me an ice pack for my face. Becky, don't be mad at your mom. She feels guilty because Sunny's health problems seem like her fault. Sunny's been through some close calls, and it really scared your mom. So she worries about her more, and I hope you understand. I kept my head down and asked, Dad, what about you? Why didn't you stand up to Mom? He paused, then sighed a bit. I've been away for a few years, and your mom's been handling things on her own. I feel like I owe her a lot, so I usually go along with her. Becky, I'm sorry you had to go through this. I bit my lip and kept questioning him, Dad. Who do you like more, me or my sister? Dad's voice was soft. Of course I like you, Becky. You're so mature. I'll bring you KFC tomorrow, okay? You're bringing it for me? Or for both of us? If it's for me and Sunny sees it, can I not share with her? And why don't you ask me how I did on my exam? Because she did bad. You know I did well, so you can't mention it, right? Mom's already hit me twice for her. She's wrong every time, but you guys never ask her to apologize to me. I slowly lifted my eyes to look at him. Why is it that in this family all that matters is my sister's happiness? Why can't you see when I'm not happy? Why was I even born if this is the way it's going to be? Why do I pay the price for your debts to each other? Dad was stunned by my words. The kitchen wasn't well lit, and I was crying so hard that my eyes hurt, so I couldn't even see his expression. After a long pause, he reached over, gently stroking my hair, and said, Becky, you're still a kid. In our hearts, both you and Sunny are our beloved daughters. It's just that Sunny's been through so much pain being sick. That's why your mom shows more concern for her. and I tend to consider her feelings more often. I'm sorry for hurting you. When you grow up and have your own children, you'll understand. I didn't say anything else. I just moved his hand away and quietly walked out of the kitchen. I heard him sighing behind me, but I didn't care anymore. I wouldn't understand, would never understand, and wouldn't want to understand. The house was cold and I shivered. This home will never warm me again. It was only later that I realized my feelings were called despair. My phone rang, snapping me out of the memory. It was Mike calling, and I picked up right away. Honey, what's up? Mike sounded amused yet exasperated. Your mom called me saying you stormed out in anger. I was even more annoyed. Did she blame you again for leading me astray? Mike laughed it off, in one ear and out the other. You know me. I'm just wondering why you're so upset today. Jason chimed in nearby. Mom, you're usually so sweet. Why are you mad? I stayed silent for a while before hesitantly saying, I'm a few days late on my period. I went to the hospital this morning, and I'm a month pregnant. It went quiet on his end. Then I was startled by his explosive cheer. He hung up and immediately sent a video call. In the video, he and Jason were wearing matching outfits, grinning like fools. I'm gonna be a big brother, Jason shouted with arms up in the air. I sighed and said, this was unexpected. I haven't decided yet. Mike cut in, an unexpected event is still destiny. Let's just go with it. Looks like we're meant to have a second child. I kinda regret blurting out the pregnancy thing to him before I had my own answer. But hey, we've had a great marriage over the years, and I can't just keep secrets and make decisions all by myself. I guess my face gave something away, 'cause Mike got a bit tense. Babe, you feeling okay? Should I cut the trip short and come back to take care of you? Little Jason was right there mimicking a nod. Go home, go home. I couldn't help but laugh. Well, you guys might want to give a heads up to your sister-in-law, considering it's a family trip. Mike's family is different from mine. He and his sister are really close. Her kid is just 2 years younger than Jason, so every summer we plan outings together. This year, I'm skipping the trip because it's Mom's 50th birthday. I sighed. I'm not against having another kid. Jason is always envious of others who have siblings. He often feels lonely, but personally, I'm scared I won't be a fair mom. Childhood trauma has messed me up big time. Ever since I had that talk with Dad at home, I got really quiet. Unless it's absolutely necessary, I steer clear of conversations. Even when my sister tried to chat with me in our shared room, I'd shut her down quick, leaving her no chance. At the dinner table, Dad would try to kick things off, but I'd just eat in silence. And Mom, well, I'd keep my distance. She always wore that look, like she wanted to say something but didn't. I'd back off, and she'd immediately go cold. One day, with my sister not around, the table was suddenly loaded with KFC boxes. Wings, fries, nuggets, you name it. Mom, for once, smiling. We got these just for you. Dig in. For me? Little did they know, I'd grown to despise KFC. I picked up a fry, but all I did was hold it, eyeing them suspiciously. Dad chuckling. Sunny's about to start middle school. You know how her grades are. We'd like you to help her out with studying. I dropped the fry like it burned and pulled a paper from my bag. I can't. I applied for dorms. Dad looked shocked. We live near the school. Why the dorms? Without batting an eye, I replied, night classes mean I'm out till 9. It's dark, who'll pick me up? Silence. Dad glanced at Mom, hoping she'd say something. Nope, she kept her mouth shut. I knew how this would go. Dad's always off working. Picking me up wasn't practical. And Mom? Yeah, right. No way she'd leave her favorite kid alone for me. Dad sighed and put his signature down. I swear, his other role besides earning money is just sighing around here. So what about summer? Winter? Surely you can help Sunny then. Mom could talk now. Thing is, I wouldn't be free even during breaks. School roped me into math competitions. Classes over holidays were a must. Truth is, I fought for all that myself with the school. Needed to keep my distance from home. For my own sanity. Nobody knew that after the second time Mom slapped me, I couldn't sleep at night. My hair fell out in clumps, and all I did was wonder why. Why care for the sick or struggling Sunny, and brush off healthy, smart Becky? Is weakness what gets you love? Should I be sick too? Sometimes I imagined a scenario where if I were gravely ill, on the brink of death, maybe Mom would remember her first little sweetheart. Maybe she'd love me like she did Sunny. I obsessed over this in class, in between classes. My grades tanked and mentally I was drifting. Luckily, my teacher noticed and spent a long time talking to me. She hugged me in the end. Becky, you're my best student. Every parent wishes for a daughter like you. And let me be clear, your parents handle things between you and your sister all wrong. But it's tough changing their mindset. They think they love you, that you're ungrateful. I'm telling you, don't let their mistakes define your self-worth. Don't chase love that isn't yours, be it family, friends, or future relationships. Take it as destiny. Focus on independence. Excel as a student. Get ready to carve out your world. When the time's right, true love will find its way to you. Even if it doesn't, you'll have a career and income to be proud of, and won't lack compared to anyone else. I truly listened. The next 2 years of middle school had me hustling nonstop. Academic work and competitions crammed my schedule. Most weekends, I'd stay away from home unless my wallet cried out. Holidays were spent at the library. I'd stay till closing if there were no classes. In those 2 years, meals at home became rare. The more ghost-like I got at home, the more sullenly my parents stared. Why sis never here? My sister would complain. With a smile I'd say, hey, works out, no fighting over the room. She'd purse her lips, staying quiet. I had an unsaid line too. I'm not even competing for our parents. Maybe my aloofness was too obvious. After I got into my dream high school, my parents insisted I stay home. No more dorms. I couldn't win that battle, so I'd come home each day. At home, a space of my own was a fantasy. Conversations came out of nowhere. Mom and Dad took to chatting at meals, mostly about grades. Their only relatable subject as high school was a grind. Back in middle school, I was always at the top of my class and winning awards. But when I entered high school, I took a step back and became more low-key. I gave up on competitions to focus on academics. After all, there were so many talented students in a good school, and even staying in the top 10 wasn't easy. The same topics came up over and over again. My dad would just make a dry remark, that's still impressive. My mom would hint, since you're not competing, maybe help the family more. I'd just keep eating, acting like I didn't hear she wanted me to tutor my sister. Maybe I was too independent in middle school. It's like my parents lost a sense of control over me. Now they hesitate to ask me for anything, especially when it concerns my sister. And my sister, maybe it's because she's hit puberty, doesn't want to talk to our parents much, but sticks to me like glue. Sis, she'd say, my classmate got scolded by the teacher today. Or sis, should I wear my ponytail high or low? And sis, I can't do this problem, help me out? I'd reply occasionally, or she'd never stop pestering. Dad would beam at us. They're thick as thieves, these two sisters. Mom, though, would retort coldly. Sunny is sticking to Becky, but you're just brushing her off. Can't you treat your sister better? I'd take a deep breath and walk away. With some people, if you can't change them, it's better to keep your distance. Until I graduated high school, my family and I had this lukewarm relationship. After working hard for 3 years, I got into Fudan University, hundreds of miles away. My parents were thrilled and bragged to relatives. No one knew my biggest motivation was to study out of town where they couldn't stop me. After graduation, I insisted on working away from home and refused to return. My sister eventually got into a local college and found a job nearby. We both got married, she to mom's friend's son, and me to my college classmate Mike in Shanghai. My parents were unhappy with my marriage, but couldn't do much. They kept finding excuses for me to visit. Recently, when mom got sick and needed surgery, they expected me to take care of her. I complied, I paid and was present. Before and after surgery, I was there around the clock. My sister only showed up on the surgery day. Dad reassured her, Becky's here, she'll handle it. My sister felt a little guilty but left. Dad explained, Sunny's daughter inherited her fragile health. She needs Sunny. Sorry to trouble you. I simply asked, what about her husband and in-laws? Lying in bed, mom got upset. How could others compare to mom's hardship? I knew you'd feel unfair about caring for me alone. Think about it. You've always been healthier and brighter than your sister. How's that fair? I didn't respond, just peeled an apple. It's okay, don't say more, Dad signaled Mom to stop talking. You need rest, he urged. I placed the apple on the table and calmly said, I've used all my 10 days of vacation. My boss won't approve more leave. The doctor says you're recovering well and won't need constant care. I'm hiring a private nurse. If you're not satisfied, maybe ask your other daughter if being a mom means neglecting daughter duties. Then I walked out. Mom's voice echoed, heartless. She took a month off for her mother-in-law, but gives up on her mom after a few days. I sneered. How is that the same? Mike and I had Jason in our second year of marriage. My parents briefly visited the hospital, gave a $50 red envelope, then left in a hurry. I was still bedridden from a C-section and asked, weren't you going to help me during the recovery? Dad awkwardly explained, Sonny's daughter had a bad cough, and your mom was worried. She thought no one else would care for her properly. Sorry, your husband must handle things here. Mike, a genuine guy, quickly assured, don't worry, I'll take care of Becky. I was furious. When I wanted to hire a postpartum nanny, they refused, saying it had to be family. Otherwise, we'd be gossiped about. After relentless calls from them, and not liking strangers at home, I agreed. But because of my sister's child, I was once again abandoned. My sister was more important, her child more valuable than mine. I smirked, swallowed my tears, and shut my eyes to rest. Luckily, Mike's mother, without hesitation, rushed to help. Becky, relax. I took care of my daughter's postpartum recovery, and they were hale and hearty. She stayed with us for over 2 years. We had a great relationship. When Jason started preschool, she left for home. Last year, she was diagnosed with breast cancer. Mike and I brought her back to Shanghai for treatment, giving her our all. In my heart, she was worth the effort. As for my mom, caring for her was repaying a debt. Mom often brought up how she nursed me through a severe illness before I was 3. She repeated it over and over, proving she was good to me. With this, the debt was finally settled. After a video call with Mike, I shut off my phone. I didn't go to Mom's birthday party. When Mike got home, I confessed my worries. I haven't told you much about my family, because I didn't know how. They never mistreated me, and they weren't stingy. But I just feel unhappy, like I've always gotten the short end of the stick. I don't know if I'm asking for too much. Mike reached over and hugged me. You just wish that if your parents only had one piece of candy, they'd give it to you sometimes, and not always to your sister. But they think it should always go to her, because you're the older one. So you should give way. Your heart has never been really satisfied. I sniffled, knowing he was right. That was exactly how I felt. Do you know how things work in my family? He asked. I shook my head. If we only had one piece of candy, my parents would always give it to my sister, and let her decide how to divide it. As long as she provided a reason, even if she took it all for herself, they accepted it. Most of the time, she'd split it with me. But if she said, today you weren't here and I fed my brother, she got to keep it because it was her reward for looking after me. My parents thought that was fair. It wasn't her job to look after me. The effort got recognized and rewarded. So as we grew up, my sister understood that being nice to me brought praise and rewards from our parents. And I learned that her kindness wasn't an obligation. I needed to thank her and reward her. Over time, her kindness became habitual, and I took over from my parents, giving her the same recognition. That's why we've always remained close. Between siblings, there's equality. No one should be forced to sacrifice for the other or do all the giving. The way your parents handled it was wrong. Trust me, we'll do better than them. I saw my parents and my sister again 3 months later. I'd been refusing their calls and hadn't replied to any messages from relatives. They came all the way to Shanghai wanting answers. Calmly, I told them, I thought you understood. I've paid back everything I owe you. When you're old, I'll fulfill my legal obligations as your daughter. But that's it. Dad was stunned, looking at me in disbelief. Mom clutched her chest in shock, unable to speak for a moment. My sister jumped, demanding, how can you say that, sis? To the beneficiary, I told her simply to not even start. Mom finally managed to ask with shaky hands, what do you mean? I pulled out a notebook with curled edges from under the coffee table. It listed all the money my family spent on me from middle school to college, for expenses from before then. I added $10,000 straight up because it wouldn't be less than that. I'd contributed $30,000 when the house was remodeled, and another $10,000 when Dad wanted help buying a car. I also paid for Mom's $3,500 medical bill. Unless I'm mistaken, Sunny didn't contribute a cent to any of these expenses. Panicking, my sister looked away. Since having the baby, I haven't worked and don't have money to help, she said. I ignored her. Mom opened her mouth to speak, but didn't. Adding in the money for birthday gifts each year, it balanced out all the costs. Oh, and I still owe $1,000, that envelope I grabbed back. I'll transfer it to you in a bit. From college onwards, every time for Mom and Dad's birthdays, I would arrange everything, balancing out the birthdays you set up for me. Both Mom and I had major illnesses once. We've taken care of each other. So that's evened out too. If you think there's something I missed, let me know and I'll settle it quickly. Dad's eyes turned red. Becky, is that all we mean to you? I stared back at him. What else? I handled school myself. Even for tutoring, I arranged everything on my own. In elementary school, you left me at Grandma's, visiting once a month. All through middle and high school, you never dropped me off or picked me up. Buying clothes? Mom only took Sunny out, and I just wore whatever was handed to me. Other than working or listening to Mom and spending time with Sunny, did you ever do anything else for me? Everything from you was just, Becky is the older one and independent. As if that justified everything. All your attention was on Sunny, even on my birthdays, choosing cakes she liked. You'd buy her an extra gift just to keep her happy. So why shouldn't she take care of you in your old age? Why come to me? I heard the sharpness in my voice, the pent-up resentment spilling over. Defeated, Dad covered his face, mumbling, I really didn't know you hated us for this. Mom glared at me with tears in her eyes. Are these little things really worth such resentment? Eyes locked with hers, I replied, yes, they are. During the years I needed love the most, you gave most of it to Sunny, just leaving me scraps and insisting it was because I was the older sibling. You have no idea how much I hated being Sunny's sister. How miserable I was. So miserable I was on the verge of depression, almost to the point of ending it all. Yes, my teacher found me dazed on the rooftop. If she'd been a moment later, who knows if I would have jumped. Mom looked at me terror-stricken. I'm sure she saw true hatred in my eyes. In the end, she crumbled, collapsing onto the sofa. 9 months later, I had a daughter, and Jason was over the moon, wanting to see his little sister every day. I asked him, she's too little and needs me more, so I'll have less time for you. Are you okay with that? Jason blinked, curling up in my arms. I'd be a tiny bit upset. He showed just a tiny pinch with his fingers. What would you want as compensation? He thought about it for a while I waited patiently. If Dad can play Legos with me for a bit every day, and Mom can tell me one more story each day, then I won't be upset. I laughed. Why's that? He gave me a knowing look, like I'd asked a really silly question. Because those things are just for Jason. My sister doesn't get them. You love her and you love me. Tears filled my eyes, and I finally understood how to be the mother of 2 kids. When you give a child their own piece of candy, it's like giving them a special kind of love. I want to give each of my kids enough love. End. Epilogue 1. On the train ride back, the 3 of them didn't talk. Dad's eyes were red, staring silently out the window at the scenery. Mom occasionally muttered to herself, it's like all the effort raising this daughter was for nothing. Sunny didn't dare say a word. She knew her sister was right. She was benefiting from it all. The phone on the table lit up. It was a contact messages from Mom. Her sister had really sent over $10,000, with a note saying we're done. Mom's face turned pale as she picked up the phone, her hands trembling as she tried to think of a reply. But then she just put it down. She suddenly asked Dad, Felix, why does she hate me so much? I only hit her twice. Does she have to hate me for life? It took Dad a long time to respond. He turned to look at Mom and said, Becky once asked me if Sunny being sick was something she had to pay for. You working so hard, all alone, to take care of Sunny, that's something I owe you. She already agreed to go live at her grandma's for 6 years. So why is it that when she comes home, she still has to pay for everything? Mom mumbled to herself, then went on the defense. What price is she paying? I didn't deprive her of food or clothing. What wrong did I do to her? Dad's glare was cold. He said, even when you're raising a cat or a dog, just feeding and clothing it isn't enough, let alone a child. You always only cared about Sunny. Has it crossed your mind how Becky must have felt? When she was still in middle school and hadn't started boarding, there was a massive downpour. You only went to pick up Sunny, and Becky had to run all the way home in the rain. She fell on the way, but when she got home, you only cared about how Sunny got a little wet and didn't even look at Becky. I was the one who noticed later that her knees were scraped and bloody. Do you have any idea how upset she was? I talked to you so many times about being fair, but you never managed to do it. Sunny's past the age of getting sick all the time. You don't have to fret over her so much. Becky is also our daughter and needs parents' attention. But you never listened. Mom laughed bitterly. Don't act like it's all my fault. If I failed, how much attention did you show her? You say you want to be fair. But if I didn't take her to KFC or didn't shop with her, couldn't you? Besides talking down to me, what else can you do as a dad? Their voices grew louder, drawing eyes from the passengers nearby. Sunny felt embarrassed, quickly urging them, don't fight on the train. Mom's bloodshot eyes turned to her. If it weren't for you always provoking and accusing your sister, why would I have hit her? Sunny was shocked, feeling hurt. Mom, how could you say that about me? Mom snorted, don't think I don't know. That time you cried until I got home, you were just trying to stir things up and make me think your sister bullied you. So I wouldn't scold you for your bad grades. At such a young age, you already know how to hurt people. When you grow up, you won't care about your parents. I've been sick for so long, and you've only visited me once. I was so good to you. Sunny felt even more wronged. Dad said with my sister around, it would be enough. Dad quietly added, I was just being polite. You actually believed it. Your sister took care of your mom day and night for 10 days, while you just showed up right before the surgery and never came back until she was discharged. Compared to your sister, do you even have a conscience? Sunny wanted to argue, but Mom, seeming insane, started yelling at Sunny, don't drag your daughter into this. You don't work just to slack off. You don't even take care of your own daughter, always out playing mahjong. When she's sick and goes to the hospital, I'm the one who's there. I didn't even look after Becky during her confinement month. Are you proud of yourself? Are you even human? Sunny, now angry, shouted back, it's not my fault you favored me over my sister. I didn't make you babysit my daughter. You chose to play favorites. Now, since my sister isn't talking to you anymore, you blame it all on me. In your eyes, you've never done anything wrong. A sudden slap landed across Sunny's face from her mom. Sunny couldn't believe it. The person who had spoiled her all her life actually hit her. Instinctively, she turned to look at her dad, who just frowned, then turned his face back to the window, as if everything before him was disgusting. Sunny felt terrified. Without her sister, could this really be a home anymore? Even though her sister rarely came home, she'd always answer their needs. She paid for house renovations, bought the car. When Mom was sick, she took care of both the expenses and Mom. Mom and Dad had even said that since her sister was making money in Shanghai, they'd rely on her financially. Because of her sister, Sunny had always felt above the rest in her in-laws' eyes. She had once proudly thought that all the family assets would be hers eventually since her sister wouldn't return. But now, her sister said everything she'd done was to tie up the loose ends of family obligations. And with those ties severed, she'd no longer care for them. Does that mean her parents would become her responsibility now? In disbelief, she looked at her indifferent dad and seemingly deranged mom. They'd long been unemployed, living off a meager pension and the big occasional red envelopes her sister would send. Without her sister, she'd be the next target to be leeched off. Yet she had nothing, not even the ability to support herself. She could imagine the chaos to come. She shivered, holding herself tightly. Epilogue 2. I know that economics is the foundation of marriage, but I never expected that my decision to cut off my original family and stop providing financial support would lead to my parents and sister all getting divorced. They're all adults with hands and feet, but act like oversized babies. The reason my parents got divorced is pretty practical. Grandma got old, with bad legs, a bunch of ailments, and needed someone to care for her. Dad, being the only son, naturally had to take care of her in her old age. But Dad only had a small pension and couldn't afford to hire help. He refused to work and spent all day lying at home watching TV. He decided to bring Grandma home to be cared for by Mom before even discussing it. Mom harbored a lifelong grudge because Grandma favored boys over girls and refused to look after my sister back in the day. So she wouldn't serve Grandma. Dad got furious. He blamed her for being biased, saying that if Becky were around, they could afford a nanny. But since I wasn't there to help, Mom had to take responsibility. Mom wasn't having it. She told him, "She's your mother. You take care of her." They started arguing. Both probably going through menopause, the fight escalated to violence. In a fit of rage, Mom smashed a vase over Dad's head. Dad got pretty unlucky and was hit in a vulnerable spot. He spent 20 days in the ICU and came out paralyzed on one side. Dad was enraged, slurring his words, trembling, and demanding a divorce and to press charges against Mom. My sister was running between the hospital and the detention center, nearly driven insane by their antics. She couldn't just stand by. Everyone back home knew them, and as their daughter, she'd get a lot of flack for not stepping up. "Sis, I know I don't have the right to call you, but with Mom and Dad like this, please have a heart and help me." She eventually broke down, got hold of my new contact information through some connections. I replied to her coolly, "Sorry, Mike and I are currently in the States for our studies, not planning to return. I can't help you. This situation is entirely Mom and Dad's choice. You're their beloved daughter. Whatever happens, you handle it as you see fit." My sister broke down, sobbing on the phone. Grandma's still at home, and no one's looking after her. Dad's treatment cost a fortune. We even sold the car. My mother-in-law heard about our mess and is forcing me to divorce her son. "Sis, I'm begging you, help me." I didn't want to hear anymore and hung up. Years later, Mike and I returned to Shanghai with our son and happened to run into someone from back home. When I mentioned my parents, he sighed heavily. "Your dad insisted on suing your mom and wouldn't sign a letter of forgiveness. Because of his serious injuries, your mom got sentenced to 1.5 years. They divorced while she was in prison. Your dad and Grandma were cared for by your sister. She got divorced too because she had no job, and the burden at home was heavy. The kid was given to her ex. She doesn't work either, just gets by on your dad's meager pension. Besides giving them food, she ignores everything else. The old ones couldn't take it and passed within a year. Without financial support, she had to reluctantly get a job. When your mom got out of prison, she was mentally unstable. She'd sit at the corner babbling, 'Why hasn't Becky come home yet?' Then she just disappeared, and no one's seen her since." After hearing all that, I was silent for a long time, feeling a dull ache in my heart. Suddenly, a childhood memory flashed through my mind from a night when my sister hadn't been born yet. Dad and Mom held little me by the desk. Dad wrote a word on a piece of paper, smiling as he looked at us. Mom pointed to it gently, saying, "Becky, this word reads home. Where there's Dad, Mom, and Becky, that's our home." A single tear quietly fell. That once joyful home blurred and eventually disappeared. The end.